Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. My name is Vimal Singh and in this particular video, we will prepare MD-102 exam. So we have a near real world questions, I would say. So we can expect the similar question or maybe the same question in our exam. And we will try in this particular video to find the right answer with reasons why the given options are correct and if not, why it is not correct. So let's explore the question and prepare MD-102 exam. Okay, so let's see the first question. Your company has deployed a custom line of business application for the sales team, and the app needs to be deployed to both company owned and the personal devices used by the sales team. So, how should you deploy the line of business application using Intune while ensuring that corporate data within the app is protected? And for that, we have multiple correct answer. We need to pick the two actions. As we already discussed, if you have to pick the right answer, try to eliminate the unrelevant answers first. If I go and check the ask what it is, how should you deploy the line of business application using Intune while ensuring that corporate data within the app is protected? So there are two things. One, we need to deploy the app, and the second, we need to protect that app. And if I see the devices, users are using their personal device as well as the company owned device. So if I go towards the answer, the first is add the LOB app to Intune as the line of business app. Okay, fine. Apply an app protection policy to the line of business application. That is fine. Deploy the line of business application using group policy. That doesn't make sense because we are talking about Intune. Require device enrollment for all personal devices? No, it's already enrolled. And use the Microsoft Store for Business to deploy the line of business application. Why should I go with that Microsoft Business Store if it is line of business application? So if that three is unrelevant, definitely the first two is going to be right answer. But let's explore how actually it works. So if I go to this App Center, I mean, inside the Intune, if I'll go to the application section, there you can see we have dedicated line of business application. We don't need to go with the app or Microsoft 360 app-based deployments. Now, the second point that you can see, this is the app protection policy that we can create and we can target if, protect your application if the users are accessing it from you can say non-managed devices or the personal devices. Okay, so even I read the description from the Microsoft document, it says A is the correct because Intune allows centralized deployment of both company-owned and the personal devices. B also ensures the corporate data is secured through the encryption and access control without requiring full device enrollment. C doesn't make sense. That's incorrect that we already talked. D is unnecessary. And E is for a store app, not for the customer or the line of business application. So our right answer is going to be add the line of business application to Intune as a line of business application apps and apply an app protection policy to the LOB app. Now, the second question talks about you have a Microsoft 365 E5 subscription that uses Microsoft Intune and all devices are enrolled in Intune. Fine. You plan to use Intune to deploy Microsoft 365 app to all supported device platforms. Which two device platform supports the app deployment and each correct answer presents the complete solution. Means again, we have two right answer that we need to pick. And if the question is about how we can deploy Microsoft 365 and what are the platforms are supported for Office 365. It's very simple. I don't think we have to put a discussion here. You can see if I talk about Microsoft 365 app, we have Windows 10 and later and the Mac operating system. So as for this, we should have this Windows and Mac last two. So let's go and see what Microsoft document says. So if you want to add and deploy Microsoft 365 app in Intune, you can select only the following two platforms, Windows 10 and Mac operating system. So as we discussed, our right answer would be Mac OS and Windows 11. Now, the third question talks about your company has a diverse range of devices, including Windows, Mac OS, and Android. Okay. And the company wants to ensure that all employees have access to necessary application while maintaining security and compliance using Microsoft Intune for device management. So how should you deploy Microsoft 365 apps to all devices and configure the app with a specific organizational setting before user open them for the first time. Again, we have multiple correct answer. We need to pick the two right answer. Here at this place, it's asked, okay, create an app configuration policy in Intune to configure organizational setting. Fine. Deploy Microsoft 365 app using Intune to include the app configuration policy during the deployment. Good. Manually configure the organizational setting on each devices after deploying. No, that doesn't make sense. And use group policy. Again, that doesn't make sense. So these two answers, the last two answers are irrelevant. So definitely this is going to be logical, but let's explore it. So as you can see, we got this option that we can go and create the app configuration policy that can be assigned or targeted to any of these devices. And the ask that you can see is what? You have Windows, Mac, and Android. So as per this, you can see we have Android OS and Windows that can be targeted app configuration policy. Now, if I see the right answer as we discussed, so the first two is going to be the right answer, create and deploy. So that's perfect. The question number 4 talks about a scenario where we have Office 365 subscription and that has Windows device named device 1 that is enrolled in Microsoft Intune. That is fine. Device 1 has the following configuration: 64-bit operating system, join type Microsoft Entra ID, and enrollment type is Intune enrolled. We purchased a new application app 1, architecture is 32-bit, and Intune win file size is 9 GB. You need to deploy app 1 to device 1 by using Microsoft Intune. What should be the right answer? So download the 64-bit version of the source file. No. Enable co-management. No. Microsoft Entra hybrid join the device. No, no, no. Reduce the file size for the Intune win file. Because as per the you can say previous limitation, Microsoft was supporting only 8 GB of file size for Intune win. But recently that Microsoft has changed this capacity and it supports around 30 GB. If I'll go to the Microsoft documents, as you can see, that's the old information. And still this information is on Microsoft Learn document. But if I'll go to current document or Microsoft official docs, there it clearly says Windows application size must not be greater than 30 GB per app. So it conflicts the answer. So in that case, what we need to do, we just need to go with, if this is the question that you are getting, you can go with this answer only because other answers are also not relevant. And this was the right answer as per the previous information. So we can consider this is the right answer. So even you can see the Microsoft document in reference of this question says, hey, that is supported 8 GB only, as 32-bit can be deployed to 64-bit operating system. So that's fine. So now the right answer as per this question and as per the old information, this would be the right answer. Okay, the question number 5 talks about you have Microsoft 365 subscription that includes 100 Windows devices and that are enrolled to Microsoft Intune. You need to deploy Microsoft 365 app for business to all devices, and the solution must ensure that Microsoft Visio is included in the deployment. What should you do first? If I look at the answer, it says assign the Visio license to your account, to your admin account, or create a device configuration from the Microsoft 365 Admin Center, create a device configuration profile from the Microsoft Intune Admin Center, and create a new app configuration policy from the Microsoft Intune Admin Center. So as per the Microsoft configuration, if you'll go to that place, this is the first thing that you need to do whenever you are trying to go with the Visio application. By default, it is not included. And for that, you need to come to the Microsoft Admin Center and you need to activate this. If you'll go inside their configuration, you will find that Visio option would be there. So under the device configuration of this Microsoft 365 Admin Center, you will get it inside it. So as per this configuration steps and configuration option, our right answers should be, first we need to create device configuration from the Microsoft 365 Apps Admin Center. Even the Microsoft document says, as you can see here, Microsoft 365 App Admin Center allows for the customization of Microsoft 365 apps installation. That includes Visio or project. Now, the next question, here it talks about you have Microsoft 365 subscription that includes 100 Android devices that are enrolled to Microsoft Intune. Okay. You plan to deploy an Android app to all managed Android devices by using Microsoft Intune. Fine. You create a new app deployment and enter the name and details of the app. What should you do next? So, while configuring it, you have just provided the name of the application. So, what would be the next step in your configuration that you will do? The answer says enter the App Store URL for the app, enter the publisher's download URL for the app, upload the APK for the app to Azure storage, and upload the APK for the app to the Microsoft Intune Admin Center. Definitely, the last two doesn't make sense. So let's see the console. And if you can see here, what we have, you provided the information related to that application. If you come back to this place, what it says, what all you have provided. You created a new app deployment and enter the name and detail of the app. So as per this, as you can see, you provided the name and detail. Now we need to provide the App Store URL. This is what we need to provide. So as per the answer, you can see that we have publisher information, but in answer you can see it is asking a publisher download URL. It's very tricky. So the right answer should be enter the App Store URL for the app. Even as per the reference, you can say information that Microsoft offers against this question is the App Store URL is required during the app deployment and allows the app to be located and installed on devices. Question number 7, if you can see, it says you have a Microsoft 365 subscription that includes the following resources: a user named user1, two groups named group1 and group2, a Windows 10 device named device1, and device1 is the member of group1 and user1 is member of group2. Just make a note of that. Then you deploy a new Windows 10 app named app1 to user1 on device1 with the following assignments, like required group1 and uninstall group2. So when the user1 signs into the device1, what is the status of app1 on the device? The app will be installed and will be available in the company portal or not? The app will be installed and will not be available in the company portal. The app will be uninstalled and will be available in the company portal. And the app will be uninstalled and will not be available on the company portal. What do you think? So it's not complicated because they are trying to give you too many things, so you will get confused. It's very simple. As you can see here, user 1, we have two groups, group 1 and group 2, and a Windows 10 device named device 1. Device 1 is a member of group 1 and user 1 is a member of group 2. So group 1 is for device and group 2 is for user. You said required group 1 means application is required on a device and uninstallation right is on group 2 means to user 1. So what will be there? So as per the documents, it says if an app is assigned as required for a device and uninstall for user, the device setting will take precedence. Means the app is not assigned as available to any group, so it will not appear as available. So the right answer would be what? The app will be installed and will not be available in the company portal. Now, the next question is, you have a Microsoft 365 subscription that includes 500 Windows 11 enterprise devices and that are managed by the Microsoft Intune. You add an app named App1 to Microsoft Intune, and you need to ensure that App1 is automatically installed for all users. What should you configure for App1? So first option, app configuration policy, app settings, application assignments, and application information. So as you can see here, in a snapshot, the moment we are trying to assign this application to anyone, we are getting this option to the group, to all user, to all devices. So if I come back, as per the question, what it says, you need to ensure that app1 is automatically installed for all user. So what we will do, assignment is going to be for all user. So if I'll go to this place, it says you need to configure the application assignment for devices enrolled with Intune. The app will be only pushed when group are assigned as required. So when the app is not installed to this group is assigned, is available for enrolled device. So the right answer would be what? Application assignment, not information, not setting, and not configuration policy. We need to assign it. Now, the next question talks like you have an Microsoft 365 subscription that includes 500 Windows 11 enterprise devices, again, that are managed by Microsoft Intune. You plan to deploy a Microsoft 365 app to the devices by using Intune. Fine. You need to limit the diagnostic data that is sent to Microsoft for the Microsoft 365 apps. What should you create? Microsoft 365 app for Windows 11 configuration, or an app configuration policy, or app protection policy, or Office apps policy. So as per this, if you can see where we are right now, we are into the device configuration, and inside the device configuration, we are getting the settings. So here we can go and explore the settings, whatever you want to do. So as you can see here, we have a diagnostic data collection information that we can configure, either you want to allow it or not. So even I'll go and explore the document. It says the Office app policy allow you to configure the feedback settings as well as the other privacy control. So our right answer would be what? An Office apps policy. Now, you have a Microsoft 365 E5 subscription that uses Microsoft Intune. All Android devices are enrolled in Intune. You need to add Android apps to Intune. For which app type should you first connect Intune to an Android enterprise account? Android enterprise system app, Android Store app, line of business app, or managed Google Play app? It's very simple. As you can see here, as per the screenshot of Intune console, for Android device, the first thing we need to go for managed Google Play app. So the right answer would be what? Manage Google Play app. Even you will go and explore the Microsoft document, it says manage Google Play is a Google Enterprise App Store and the sole source of application for Android Enterprise in Intune. Okay, the next question talks about your company is planning to deploy Microsoft 365 apps to their Windows 11 devices using Intune, and they want to ensure that all previous MSI version of Office are removed during the deployment to avoid conflicts. How should you configure the deployment to remove all existing MSI version of Office from the devices? If I take a reference of Microsoft documents where it says enabling the remove MSI from end user devices option in the App Suite configuration is going to be the right answer. So if I go and check that, deploy the Microsoft 365 apps as Win32 app to handle the removal of MSI version. That doesn't make sense. Enable the remove MSI from the end user device option in the App Suite configuration. Or manually uninstall all MSI version from Office. So that doesn't make sense. And use the PowerShell script to remove MSI apps. No, that doesn't make sense. So if I go and check the configuration, if you're trying to configure this Microsoft 365 app from Intune, there it gives you the option remove other versions. That's the option. And if you see their information, it says yes, select yes to remove other version of Office MSI from user devices. So you just need to turn it on. So the right answer is going to be this. Enable the remove MSI from the end user device option, the App Suite configuration. Okay, so let's explore this question number 12, where it says where your company has recently migrated to Microsoft Intune to manage their endpoint devices. And you have a mix of Windows 10 and Windows 11 devices and need to deploy a critical line of business application packaged as a Win32 app. The application must be installed on all devices in the sales department. How should you ensure that the application is deployed and kept up to date automatically? We have multiple ways to do this, and the answer can be many, right? Here the answer can be like create one line of business application and then assign it to sales department. But we need to pick the right answer from the given options, and these options are what? The first option says deploy the application using group policy and assign it to the sales department OU. So definitely it is about Intune, so we are not going to consider this answer because it is about group policy. The second one is manually install the application on each device and configure Windows Update to keep it updated. Again, we are not going to do it manually because again, it's part of Intune. The third option is use the Intune in management extension to deploy the Win32 app and configure it as a Windows Update. Again, we are not going to do it manually because again, it's part of Intune. The fourth option is use the Intune in management extension to deploy the Win32 app and configure it as a Windows Update. The fifth option is use the Intune in management extension to deploy the Win32 app and configure it as a Windows Update. The sixth option is use the Intune in management extension to deploy the Win32 app and configure it as a Windows Update. The seventh option is use the Intune in management extension to deploy the Win32 app and configure it as a Windows Update. The eighth option is use the Intune in management extension to deploy the Win32 app and configure it as a Windows Update. The ninth option is use the Intune in management extension to deploy the Win32 app and configure it as a Windows Update. The 10th option is use the Intune in management extension as a required app for the sales department group. That make more sense. And the fourth option is use the Microsoft Store for Business to deploy the application and assign it to the sales department group. We will not pick this option because it's talking about Microsoft Store for Business. This question asks for the critical line of business application. So even I just pick that point, and as per that point, if I'll try to find the answer, this is going to be correct one. But there is one more thing that we need to understand. Whenever you're trying to install any application, this Intune management extension is required for that. Even if you go and explore the Microsoft document, you can see under the prerequisite, there is Intune management extension that is required. So the right answer would be what? Use the Intune management extension to deploy the Windows 32 app and configure it as a required app for the sales department group. Okay, so let's move to question number 13. Here it says your company has recently deployed Microsoft Intune to manage their mobile devices and application. And they have a mix of iOS and Android devices used by employees for both personal and work tasks. The IT department wants to ensure that corporate data is protected while allowing employees to use their devices for personal purpose. So you need to configure app protection policy to ensure corporate data on these devices without requiring device enrollment. So each correct answer presents part of the solution, and which three actions should you use? So if I'll summarize it, we have users with a mix of iOS and Android devices. Means they're using mobile phones maybe. We as IT department have to take care if they are using their personal devices to use our official data, or means from devices from there they can have access on the official data or company data, how we can protect that. And we need to pick the three right answers. So if I see here, the answer says assign the MAM policy to the user groups. So assigning the MAM policy to the user group can be the correct answer because mobile application management policy target users and ensuring that only those in a specific user group are required to comply with the app protection policies. And this method will protect your corporate data while allowing users to retain personal control over their devices. Then configuring, the second option says configure app protection setting for the managed apps. This also seems correct because this setting allow you to, you can say, enforce security measures like data encryption or preventing data sharing between personal and the corporate apps. The third option that I can see is create a mobile application management policy in Intune. This is also correct because MAM allows you to secure corporate data without enrolling your personal devices in mobile device management applications. And that ensures that corporate data is protected at the app level. So the required means ask was three right actions, and I can see the first three is the correct. But let's see what is the fourth one. It says enroll all devices in Intune using mobile device management. We just talked about it's not mandatory, so that doesn't make sense. And requires user to install the company portal app. No, again, that's not because it's about the protection. Okay, so as per our finding, the first three is the right answer. So as you can see, the correct answer is assign the MAM policy to the user groups, then configure app protection setting for managed apps, and create a mobile application management policy in Intune. Now, the next question is your company is implementing a new email application for its employees. The IT department wants to ensure that the application is configured to block external images and restrict certain URLs for security reasons. The employee uses mix of iOS and Android devices and both managed and unmanaged. So which two actions should you perform to apply this configuration to the email applications across all devices? Okay, the first option that we can see, create a separate app protection policy for each device type. That doesn't make sense because we have to create a centralized policy that can protect all the devices. Now, the second option says create an app configuration policy for managed apps and include the required setting. That is logical. And this could be the correct answer because it allows you to enforce settings such as blocking external images and restricting certain URLs across all managed devices consistently. And the third option says create an app configuration policy for managed devices and include the required settings, right? So app setting or device setting that you can see, there are two We will create the app policy for managed devices and we will create the app policy for managed apps. This two seems more relevant towards our ask. The fourth option is says instruct employee to manually configure the email application setting. Definitely, we are not going to do that. So logically, this two seems the correct answer. So let's go and check it out. Yes. Create an app configuration policy for managed app and include the required settings, and create an app configuration policy for managed devices and include the required settings. That's fine. Now, question number 15. Here it says you have a Microsoft 365 E5 subscription that uses Microsoft Intune. Fine. You have the following devices enrolled in Intune, like device 1 is Windows 11, device 2 is Android, device 3 is iOS. And you plan to create an app configuration policy named config1 in Intune. To which device you can apply this config1? This is app configuration policy. Where we can apply this app configuration policy? So if I'll go and check that, this app configuration policy can be applied to the iOS, iPad OS, or Android Enterprise. So we have iOS and Android. There is a device 2 and device 3. So the correct answer should be 4. If I read the document and the reference from the Microsoft, it says you can create create and use app configuration policy to provide configuration setting for both iOS, iPad apps, OS, and Android apps. So our correct answer would be device 2 and device 3. That's a very simple question. Now, question number 16 talks like, hey, you have a Microsoft 365 E5 subscription that uses Microsoft Intune. Fine. You have the following devices like device 1, Windows 11, enrolled in Intune. Device 2, Android device, enrolled in Intune. Fine. Device 3, Android device, not enrolled in Intune. And device 4, iOS device, not enrolled in Intune. Fine. So, to which devices you can apply an app configuration policy? Again, it's tricky. It's based on the previous question. So we can apply this app configuration policy where? iOS, iPad OS, and Android. But as you can see, these devices are not enrolled and some of the devices are enrolled. Some device 2 is enrolled, that is Android. This is Windows 11 enrolled in Intune. So what would be the right answer? So if I'll go to this place, as we already explored, this can be applied only these two. So the right answer should be only these two. So where you have these two? So device 2, device 3, device 4. I think the right answer should be device 2, device 3, device 4 only. As per the Microsoft documents, again, we have the similar answer, similar reference as per the previous one. So the right answer would be device 2, device 3, and device 4 because device 2, 3, 4 has iOS, Android, and Android. Okay, question number 17. You have a Microsoft 365 subscription that includes 100 users. Users access Microsoft 365 services by using Microsoft Edge on personal Android device. And you need to deploy Microsoft Edge bookmarks to the Android devices. What should you configure? A compliance policy or a configuration policy or app configuration policy or app protection policy. So as per the document, it says an app configuration policy allow you for app settings to be configured regardless of the device enrollment state or how the app is delivered to the device. So the right answer would be app configuration policy. Now, question number 18. What it says, you have a Microsoft 365 subscription that includes a group named Group 1 and that contains 500 Android devices. So you provision a new app protection policy in Microsoft Intune with the following setting. Target to app on all device types. Yes. Target policy to all Microsoft apps. Save copies of organization data. Block. Allow user to save copies of selected services. OneDrive for business. And the assignment is group 1. That's the setting of your app protection policy. Now the ask is what? One of the user or few users reports that they can save data to their devices. You need to ensure that users are prevented from saving data to their local devices. Which setting should you modify? Allow user to save copy to the selected service, assignments, or save copies of organizational data or target policy to. This is very simple. So as we know, we are targeting it with the help of assignments. If it is not being targeted to the right person, so that person can save their data on their local devices. So the right answer should be assignment. We need to check the assignment. Whoever has, you can say, raised this concern, or they told you that they are able to save their data on a drive, it means that user won't be part of that group wherever you have assigned it. So we will go and recheck and make sure the right group is being targeted with this policy or not. The next question is, you have a Microsoft 365 subscription that uses Microsoft Intune. You plan to implement a bring your own device policy to support iOS and Android devices. Fine. You need to ensure that users can access all Microsoft 365 apps on their devices, and the solution must meet the following requirements. You need to prevent users copying and pasting information from Microsoft 365 apps to non Microsoft apps, and private devices must not be enrolled to Microsoft Intune. What should you configure? A conditional access policy, or device restrictions, or app protection, or app configuration? Again, it's a very simple and easy question because it is about the application. And as per Microsoft document, what it says, an app protection policy allow you to disable copy and paste between application. With conditional access policy, you cannot configure the app behavior, and the restrictions policy or the configuration policy do not meet all the requirements. So the right answer would be what? App protection policy. Now, you have a Microsoft 365 subscription that includes iOS and Android devices that are managed by Microsoft Intune. Fine. You need to prevent users printing Microsoft Word documents stored in Microsoft 365 from their mobile devices by using an app protection policy. Which setting should you configure? Access requirement, conditional access policy, conditional launch, or data protection? Again, simple. Data protection. It's very logical. Even you are not a Intune guy, if you are a technical guy, you can easily relate it because it is about protecting your printing the document which belongs to Word. So it's one of the data. So that will fall under the data protection. And the document says the data protection setting has an option to prevent printing of organizational data. You need to set the block. So the right answer would be data protection. The next question, you have a Microsoft 365 subscription that includes iOS and Android devices that are managed by using Microsoft Intune. Fine. You plan to implement a data protection framework for financial data. You need to create app protection policy for the framework to protect company data in the event that a device is rooted or jailbroken. So what two actions should the policy perform? And each correct answer presents part of the solution. Okay. So from which scenario you have to protect? App protection policy from the framework to protect company data in the event of devices rooted or jailbroken. So here we need to understand what exactly this jailbroken is. So jailbroken means what? In the context of Intune, we can say if anyone is using iOS or iPad OS devices, and if someone has configured it in such a way that it can bypass the operating system restrictions or the security measures, that is basically known as jailbroken. So what I should configure to protect it from the jailbroken? So we can block the access, or encrypt organizational data, or reset the PIN, or wipe out the data. So if I explore the Microsoft document, it says the finance department has access to the financial data that poses a uniquely high risk. And any change into the device that becomes jailbroken or rooted should immediately result in a wipe to ensure no data can be retrieved. So what should be the right answer? First, encrypt your organizational data. And second, if it is jailbroken, then wipe the data. Okay. So the next question is, your company has a mix of corporate owned and BYOD. And this device is used by employee to access the company data. The IT department wants to ensure that corporate data is protected on both managed and unmanaged devices without affecting personal data. So how should you implement a solution that protects corporate data at the app level while allowing employee to use their devices for personal tasks. So let's explore the answers. The first says deploy an VPN solution to secure all device communication. I don't think. So deploying a VPN is incorrect as it secures communication but doesn't protect data at the app level. The second point says implement Intune app protection policy for both managed and unmanaged app. It seems correct because it allows you to secure corporate data within app without affecting your personal data on BYOD devices. Now, the third option says require all devices to be enrolled in Intune MDM. So it basically contradicts the goal of allowing personal use without full device management. So that doesn't make sense. And use Microsoft Defender for Endpoint to monitor all devices is incorrect because it focuses on the endpoint security rather than a specific app level data, right? So what should be the right answer? So the right answer should be implement Intune app protection policy for both managed and unmanaged devices. That would be the correct answer, answer B. Now, the next question is, you have a Microsoft 365 E5 subscription that contains a Microsoft Entra tenant. And the tenant contains the following devices, like device 1, which is Microsoft Entra joined device, Windows 11 device. Device 2, Microsoft Entra registered Windows 11 device. Device 3 is Microsoft Entra joined Windows 10 device. And device 4 is Microsoft Entra registered iOS device. We have mix of Windows, iOS, and inside the Windows 10 and 11. So which devices can be activated by using subscription activation? So let's explore this. Here it says, as per the Microsoft documents, to be able to use subscription activation, device must be Microsoft Entra joined or hybrid Microsoft Entra joined. Workgroup joined or Microsoft Entra registered device are not supported. So now, who all are Microsoft joined and hybrid joined? So you can see device 3 is Microsoft Entra joined, fine. Device 1 is Microsoft Entra joined, fine. And device 4 is registered, device 2 is registered. What should be the right answer? So as for this description, device 1 and 3, because these two devices are only Microsoft Entra joined device. Okay. Question number 24. It says you have a Microsoft 365 subscription. You purchase 100 Windows devices that will be deployed to new users. You need to ensure that you can deploy the devices by manually registering the devices using Windows Autopilot. What should you do first? Upload the device name of each device to Microsoft Intune. Do I need to upload the name? Or upload the hardware ID of each device to Microsoft Intune? Or upload the IP address of each device to Microsoft Intune? Or upload the MAC address of it? It's very easy. If you heard about Microsoft Intune Autopilot, definitely you would be able to answer this question. So Autopilot requires hardware ID. And in my answer, the B is asking that we need to upload the hardware ID to each device in a Microsoft Intune. So that would be the correct answer. Very simple. Now, question number 25. You plan to deploy 25 new Windows 11 devices that will be used by customers to browse the internet in public location. You need to recommend a Windows Autopilot mode for the deployment. What should you do? Windows Autopilot for existing device, Windows Autopilot reset, Windows Autopilot self-deploying mode, or Windows Autopilot user-driven mode. So only self-deploying mode focus directly on the kiosk mode requirement. So in this question, you can use or you can deploy the kiosk browser. So the answer would be Windows Autopilot self-deploying mode. Now question number 26. It says, your company is deploying a new Windows 11 devices to its remote workforce. And they want to ensure that these devices are pre-configured with necessary applications, settings, and policies before being delivered to employees. How should you implement a deployment strategy to ensure the devices are business ready upon delivery? Each correct answer presents the complete solution. And what are the three possible ways to achieve this goal? It's talking about the three. Three right answer. So let's explore one by one. The first answer says use Autopilot to automatically configure and enroll the device into Intune. Sounds correct as per our previous discussion, because Autopilot provides a zero touch deployment experience and ensuring that devices are pre-configured with necessary application settings and policies, which is essential for streamlined deployment to the remote workers. So using this Microsoft, uh, you can say Autopilot, we can meet this requirement, whatever is being asked in this question. So the first seems correct. The second option, it says use Microsoft Intune to deploy PowerShell script that removes unnecessary built-in apps. What do you think? Yes, we can do that because we have to make that device ready for our remote workforce. So it is also correct because Intune can be used to automate the removal of unwanted software by simplifying the configuration process and ensuring devices are business ready. Now, the third option says create and deploy device compliance policy in Intune to ensure security settings are applied. This is also correct because it ensures that device meet the required security setting and compliance standard before being handed over to the employee. And finally, the fourth option is create a manual deployment process for each device configuring setting on site. What do you think? Is correct? No, it is not, because it adds unnecessary administrative overhead and does not meet the goal for automating the deployment. So, the fourth is not going to be the right answer. Why should I send someone and do this? It's not going to be automated. Use Windows Server Update Service to push out applications and updates. Oh my God. Definitely incorrect, because WSUS is primarily used for managing updates, not for configuring devices, the settings, policies, not for that. So as per our finding and the ask of this question, the first three seems the correct answer. So use Windows Autopilot to automatically configure and enroll the devices into Intune. Use Microsoft Intune to deploy PowerShell scripts to remove unnecessary built-in apps, and create and deploy device compliance policy in Intune to ensure security settings are applied. Now, the next question, you have a Microsoft 365 E3 subscription that includes 500 devices and use Microsoft Intune. The devices run Windows 10 22H2 and are configured with Windows recovery environment. You need to deploy Windows Autopilot, and the solution must minimize the time taken to revert devices to a business ready state. What should you do first? Do we need to create a deployment profile? We need to create a dynamic device group first, or enable the disable automatic redeployment credential policy, or manually register the devices with the Autopilot. The first thing, we need to create the deployment profile when it comes to the Autopilot. So I think the right answer should be creating deployment profile. Anyway, let's explore the Microsoft document. What it says, the first step is to create deployment profile, and that converts all targeted device to Autopilot devices, as we discussed. So this is going to be the right answer. Create a deployment profile. Now, you're building a Windows Autopilot solution, and during testing, you notice that deployment are failing due to user restarting device before the deployment has finished. So you need to provide users with the option of collecting logs during deployment and contact details for the help. What do we need to do? What should you modify? Configuration policy, deployment profile, device group setting, or enrollment status page. So if you heard about, or if you have configured this Autopilot, you must have heard about this enrollment status page. Let's take the example, reference from the Microsoft document. It says by default, enrollment status page does not show users the progress of enrollment. Based on the input, the result could be timeout, and it's taking long time. So configuring an enrollment status page allow the user to view additional details on the progress and provide you with the insight into what is happening. So the right answer would be enrollment status page. The next question, it says your company is planning to deploy Windows 11 to a large number of new devices purchased from an OEM. The devices come with Windows 11 Pro pre-installed, but Contoso needs them to configure with a specific organizational setting and applications. How should you streamline the deployment process to ensure minimal IT intervention while meeting the Contoso configuration requirements? Multiple choice, and we need to pick the two actions. Let's explore one by one. Create a provisioning package using Windows Imaging and Configuration Designer, ICD. It can be the correct answer because if I have to go with the standard settings configuration within our operating system, so we can create our own image, because this ICD means Imaging and Configuration Designer allow you to apply custom settings, configuration and application during your device setup. The second option says deploy a custom Windows 11 image using Windows Deployment Service. What do you think? Will it be the right answer? So B is incorrect. Why? Because here it is talking about WDS. It's a Windows Server role. It's an additional service. So it will be incorrect because it requires more manual effort and you can say more infrastructure, which contradicts the goal of minimal IT intervention. Because ask is what? Minimal IT intervention. The third option that you can see, the C, that perform an in-place upgrade from Windows 11 Pro to Windows 11 Enterprise. Oh, this is also incorrect because an upgrade is not necessary in this case. Instead, we can use existing tool to manage configuration without needing to change the operating system version. And the fourth one is use Windows Autopilot to customize the out-of-box experience. This is going to be correct because Autopilot automates the configuration process and ensures the device are set up with the specific organizational setting and applications, because our requirement is what? Minimal intervention. So we can go with that. Okay. So as per our, you can say, analysis, what we are thinking, these two are going to be the correct answer. The first one, create a provisioning package using the Windows Imaging and Configuration Designer, and we can use this out-of-box experience. Okay. Next question number 30. You have a Microsoft 365 E5 subscription that uses Microsoft Intune. You have the following devices enrolled in Intune. Device 1, Windows 11. Device 2, Mac OS. Device 3, iPad OS. You plan to use a template to create an endpoint protection device configuration policy, device configuration profile in Intune. Endpoint protection device configuration. And for which devices can you create an endpoint protection device configuration profile template? Okay. For iPad, for Mac OS, or for Windows 11 OS. So, as per the Microsoft document, it says the endpoint protection device configuration template is available only for Windows 10 and later, and Mac OS platform. So, your Android or iPad OS will not be supported with this endpoint protection configuration template. So, what should be the right answer? Device 2 and device 1. Where it is? Device 1 and device 2 only. So, first is going to be the right answer. Okay. The next question, you have a Microsoft 365 subscription. You need to ensure that any Intune managed device, any Intune managed Windows 10 device that has been inactive for 180 days is automatically wiped, and that the enrollment is deleted from Microsoft Intune. What should you configure? Compliance policy, configuration policy, device cleanup rule, or the security baseline? So device cleanup rule can be configured to automatically delete and wipe any device that has been inactive for, you can say, for a configured period of time between 32 to 70 days. Our ask is 180 days. So it's very simple device cleanup rule that we will use. Okay. The next question is, you have a Microsoft 365 E5 subscription that uses Microsoft Intune. Fine. The following devices have Microsoft 365 apps installed and are enrolled in Intune. Fine. Device 1, Windows 11. Device 2, Android. Device 3, iOS. You plan to use a Microsoft 365 apps for enterprise security baseline named Baseline 1 To which devices can you apply baseline 1? Again, it's very simple. If you have played with the Microsoft baseline, there it says it will be applied only to Windows. So if I explore it, the Microsoft reference and document, it says the Microsoft 365 apps for enterprise security baseline can be applied only to Windows 10 and later. And even if you can go and check it out, enterprise security baseline, as I mentioned, in a console, you will find only for Windows. So right answer should be last option, which is fourth, device 1 only. Okay, the next question, where it says you have Microsoft 365 E5 subscription that includes 500 Windows 11 devices and that are managed by using Microsoft Intune. Fine. You need to apply granular security controls to the Microsoft Edge configuration on each devices, and the solution must minimize administrative efforts. Okay, what should you do? The ask is what? You need to apply granular security controls to the Microsoft Edge configuration on each device. Okay, compliance policy, security baseline, attack surface reduction, or endpoint detection and response. Let's explore. And as for Microsoft document, it says you need to configure a security baseline in order to apply the security controls to Microsoft Edge configuration. So configuring a compliance policy, endpoint detection and responses or attack surface reduction does not allow you to apply the required control while minimizing the administrative efforts. So only the security baseline is going to be the right answer. Attack surface reduction is for the external threat attack. Endpoint detection and response, again, external threat protection. And compliance policy is for the device configurations, or I mean, compliance rules. So, where you have the policies that you're going to apply or enforce on the devices to make sure the device is meeting my requirement or my condition or not. The security baseline is going to be right answer where we can control Microsoft Edge configurations. The next question is, you have a Microsoft 365 subscription and 50 iOS devices. You plan to implement Defender for Endpoint for all corporate iOS devices. Defender for Endpoint for all corporate iOS devices. You need to onboard the iOS devices to Defender for Endpoint. What tool should you use? Group policy, JMF Pro, that is for Apple, local script, or Microsoft Intune. It's very simple. Only Intune allow you to deploy the Microsoft Defender Endpoint app for iOS devices. So the right answer is going to be Microsoft Intune. Next question, you have a Microsoft 365 E5 subscription that contains devices that run Windows 11. All the devices are enrolled in Microsoft Intune. You need to ensure that the devices use delivery optimization while installing Windows Update. What should you configure in Intune? Device configuration policy, or feature update for Windows 10, or quality update, or update ring for Windows 10 and later. So as per the Microsoft document, it says delivery optimization reduce the bandwidth consumption when devices download the application and updates. So we can configure delivery optimization by using the device configuration profile. So the right answer is going to be first, device configuration profile. Now, you have a Microsoft 365 subscription that includes the following devices. We have device 1, which has Windows 10 Pro version 22S2, device 2 Windows 11 Pro version 23S2, device 3 Windows 11 Home version 23S2, and device 4 Windows 11 Enterprise version 22S2. The ask is what? You need to manage updates for the Windows devices by using update rings in Microsoft Intune. Which devices can be managed by using Microsoft Intune? It's very simple. Even I consider the update ring or update. So as per this Microsoft document, it says Windows 10 and 11 Pro, Windows 10 and 11 Enterprise, and Windows 10 and 11 Team for Surface Hub devices, Windows Holographic for Business, and Windows 10 and 11 Enterprise LTSC are Windows edition that are supported for update ring policy. So the right answer would be what? As you can see, 1011 Pro. Where we have 1011 Pro. Home edition, no. Enterprise, yes. So what would be the right answer? device 1, 2, and 4. Can you see that third answer? So it's going to be device 1, 2, and device 4 only because home edition is not supported here. Question number 37, it says you have a Microsoft 365 subscription that includes 50 corporate iOS devices and that are enrolled in Microsoft Intune. Fine. You need to ensure that iOS updates are deferred for 90 days. The solution must prevent users manually installing update during the 90 days period. What should you configure? Compliance policy, configuration policy, update policy, or update ring policy? So a configuration policy can be configured to delay the visibility of software update for 90 days. So it's very simple and straightforward. We need to create the configuration policy. Now, you have a Microsoft 365 subscription that includes 500 Windows 10 Enterprise 22H2 devices and that are managed by using Microsoft Intune. Fine. You need to update the devices to Windows 11. And the solution must ensure that user can postpone the update for a maximum of 2 weeks. So what should you configure first? Device configuration profile, feature update, quality update, or update ring policy. So update ring policy gives you the deferment settings. So we can go with the ring policy. Now you have a Microsoft 365 subscription that includes 500 Windows 10 Enterprise 22H2 devices and that are managed by using Microsoft Intune. You plan to update the Windows devices to Windows 11. You need to identify the devices that do not meet the requirement for Windows 11. What report should you review? It's about the reporting. So, we have dedicated reporting section. Try to recall that point. So all device report or device compliance report or Windows feature update device compatibility risk report or Windows feature update device readiness report. Again, this is, if you are experienced with the report and their reporting options, then you can easily answer this question. If not, then you need to go with the Microsoft document references. So you can see here, the Windows feature update device readiness report shows devices with their readiness status. So Windows feature update device readiness report. So you can see here, the last option is going to be the right answer. Okay, so the next question, here you can see you want to ensure that all new Windows 11 devices are joined to Microsoft Entra ID during the out-of-box experience. And the IT department has configured the device registration service and ensured that all necessary prerequisites are met. You need to join the new Windows 11 devices to Microsoft Entra ID during the OOBE experience. So each correct answer presents part of the solution. Which 3 actions should you perform? So it is this question is asking you, tell me the step that you're going to perform while joining your device with OOBE. So the first thing, you need to turn on the new device and start the setup process. Yes, true, that makes sense. Because this is what the first thing we have to do. Now, what should be the second option? Escape the network connection? No, because internet connection is required. Select the device belongs to the family when prompted? No. Yeah, this can be the right answer. We need to set up the work or school when prompted. And then we need to provide the credential that your organization provided. So yes, this 3 is going to be the right answer. First, we need to turn on device and initiate the setup process. Then we need to set up work or school whenever it prompts, and we need to provide the credential so it will use to join your Entra ID. Perfect. So this 3 is going to be the right answer. Even if I go and check the Microsoft document, it says, okay, turning on the device is going to be right. This is the first step that we need to perform. Then the second option is going to be ensure the device is prepared for Microsoft Entra ID join, that is set up work or school. And the third option that you can see is going to be complete authentication process with the help of credential that you are going to pass it to them. D and E, as we discussed, is not going to be correct answer. So our right answer would be this 3. Provide the credential, select the setup process, and turn on the new device and start the setup process. The sequence would be different. The first this, the second, and third. But in option, it is like in this sequence. That's the reason answer would be like this. Okay, let's explore this question. Your company operates in a hybrid environment with both on-premises Active Directory and Microsoft Entra ID, and they need to ensure that Windows 11 devices can access both cloud and on-premises resources seamlessly. So you need to configure the devices to be Microsoft Entra Hybrid Join. Perfect. And each correct answer presents part of the solution. Which three actions should you perform? So configure Microsoft Entra Connect to synchronize device object. Yes, perfect. This is mandatory for hybrid join. And disable WS Fed and WS Trust protocol. No. This is for authentication, not. We are not going to do that. Enable device write back in Microsoft Entra Connect. Yes, this can be the requirement. And ensure the device are domain joined. That is also correct. Register device manually in Microsoft Entra ID. No, we don't need to register it manually. It will get automatically registered once we'll configure this hybrid joined option. And use Microsoft Entra domain services to manage devices. No, I don't need to use Microsoft Entra domain service to manage the devices. So I think right answer should be this. Then configure write back and ensure the devices are domain joined. Let's see the Microsoft document, what it says. It says to enable Microsoft Entra Hybrid Join, you must configure Microsoft Entra Connect to synchronize the device object, which is fine. Then ensure the devices are domain joined, perfect. And enable device write back, that's great. So that three things are required to initiate the hybrid join, which is already a domain joined machines. Because we have to give the seamless experience to the devices to access the resources. Doesn't matter it's a cloud and on premises. In that case, this should be the first three action that we need to perform. Okay, so as we talked, this is going to be the right answer. Entra Connect, enable device write back, and ensure the devices are domain joined. Now, the next question, your company is implementing BYOD policy for employees using Android devices. And they need to ensure that work and personal data remain separate on these devices. So you need to configure the appropriate enrollment profile for these Android devices. Which enrollment profile should you configure? Android Enterprise Dedicated, Android Enterprise Fully Managed. Okay, Android Enterprise Work Profile or Device Enrollment Manager. It's again very simple, as you can see from the document. So the first thing, as you can see, the Android Enterprise Work Profile is designed to keep work and personal data separate on your BYOD device. So we will create Android Enterprise Work Profile. The fully managed, Android fully managed and the dedicated, which is Android Enterprise Dedicated, profile are intended for corporate owned devices, not for personal devices. And the device enrollment manager is used for enrolling large number of devices by an administrators. So what would be the right answer? Android Enterprise Work Profile as per this question asked. Okay, let's explore question number 43. Your company is using Microsoft Intune to manage their devices, and they want to create a dynamic group that automatically includes all devices running iOS 11 or older to apply a specific security policy. Okay, you need to create a dynamic group for these devices. Which membership rule should you use? So yeah, device and their properties, device OS version. This is what we are going to compare. Contains iOS. No, this is not going to be correct because the ask is what? iOS 11 or older. Again, we will not use this operator equal to because it will only add the device as a member of this group which has iOS 11. Greater than, because the ask is what? Older and iOS 11. So in that case, we will go with less than equal to 11. If I go and check the Microsoft reference and document, it says less than equal to is the correct because it includes all device, this one and older of this. And this is what the ask is. So the right answer is going to be device OS version less than equal to 11. Now, the next question is, your company has recently implemented Microsoft Intune to manage their fleet of Windows 10 and Windows 11 devices. They want to ensure that all devices use a strong two-factor authentication mechanism to enhance security. You need to ensure the devices to replace password with more secure authentication method. How should you configure the device to implement this secure authentication method? So configure Windows Hello for Business, the account protection policy, or create a VPN profile. So let's explore and take a reference from the Microsoft. Here it clearly says configure Windows Hello for Business in the account protection profile A is the correct. Why? Because it replaced the password with the more secure authentication method, like biometrics and PIN you can specify. The second one, which is VPN profile. So if I talk about this VPN profile with the two-factor authentication, that secures the remote access but does not replace the password as the primary method. So this is not going to be correct one. If I think about the credential guard in the endpoint protection policy, so that protects against the credential theft, but does not replace the need of passwords, the need for passwords. So again, that is not going to be correct answer. And the fourth one is set up a custom OMA URI profile for the password policy. No, because this OMA URI is the policy address, right? That manage the password complexity, not the password, you can say, requirements or authentication. So the right answer is going to be what? Windows Hello for Business in the account protection profile. Now the next question is, you have a Microsoft 365 E5 subscription that uses Microsoft Intune. You plan to use the required device to be marked as compliant setting in a conditional access policy. You need to ensure that device compliance is evaluated. What should you do first? Create and assign a security baseline profile in Intune, enroll device to Intune, join devices in Microsoft Entra ID, and register device in Microsoft Entra ID. It's very simple. What do we need to do? Require device to be marked as compliant setting in the conditional access policy, and you need to evaluate it. So as you can see here, companies that have the device enrolled in Intune can use the information returned from the devices to identify a specific policy compliance requirement. If the device is not enrolled in Intune, their compliance status is unavailable and cannot be evaluated. So what should be the right answer? Enroll devices into Intune. That is going to be the correct answer. Okay, you have a Microsoft 365 subscription that uses Microsoft Intune. You create a conditional access policy named Policy 1. You need to configure Policy 1 to prevent user connecting to Microsoft 365 services by using non-compliant devices. Again, you need to configure a Policy 1 to prevent users connecting to Microsoft 365 services by using non-compliant devices. What should you configure in Policy 1? Authentication context, continuous access evaluation, grant control, and session control. You need to configure Policy 1 to prevent users connecting. We need to go and set the grant control. There we can say block if it is coming from non-compliant. So conditional access grant control contains the option to require a device to be marked as a compliant. Otherwise, we can block it. So grant control is the option or the section there we can set this option. Your company is planning to deploy Windows Hello for Business in a hybrid environment using both on-premises Active Directory and Microsoft Entra ID. And they want to ensure a seamless deployment without conflicts between group policy and Intune settings. How should you configure the devices to implement Windows Hello for Business in the hybrid environment? Okay, let's explore all the answers one by one. So first option, you can see configure Windows Hello for Business setting in the both Intune and group policy without any coordination. If you don't have coordination, that's going to be really difficult and it may lead to conflicts and it will make your deployment inconsistent. The second option, disable Windows Hello for Business in Intune and use only on-premises ADDS setting. That is not required because our ask is what for hybrid and it should get managed from the Intune as well. So that is also not going to be right answer. The third option, use Intune to manage Windows Hello for business setting and ensure no overlapping setting with the group policy. That makes sense. So, because here it says, okay, use Intune to manage Windows Hello business settings and ensure no overlapping setting with the group policy. We do not have any policy by coordinating the on-prem configuration. And here if I see the fourth option, use only group policy to manage Windows Hello for business setting. No, definitely not, because if I'm managing it through the group policy only, that will not make sense, because again, it's a hybrid environment. So I think the C is going to be the right answer. Yep. So C is going to be the right answer. Now, the next question, your company wants to implement conditional access policy to protect organizational data, and they need to ensure that only devices compliant with their Intune policy can access Microsoft 365 services. How should you configure the devices to implement this conditional access policy? And each correct answer is a part of solution. What three actions should you take? The first that I can see is what? Assign the conditional access policy to the user group accessing Microsoft 365 services. Okay. So this ensures that the policy applies specifically to the user who need access, and there only it will enforce the compliance policies, right? I mean, conditional access policy. Okay, this can be considered. Let's explore the other one, where it says configure the policy to allow access from unmanaged devices. Configure policy to allow from unmanaged devices. It contradicts the goal of ensuring only compliant device can access the service. So that doesn't make sense. Create a conditional access policy in Microsoft Entra ID. Definitely we have to create it because it is asking for three actions. So this is going to be one action. Enable location-based access control in a conditional access policy. Note that we don't need to do. The reason behind it is about the users, those who belongs to your Entra ID, and they're trying to access the service. In the question, they're not asking if the user is coming from this particular location. So we have to restrict on the basis of their location. So that won't be the right answer. And set the policy to require device compliance from Intune. This could be the right answer. So I think the first, create the conditional access policy, then set the policy to require device compliance from the Intune condition, and then assign this conditional access policy to the user group accessing Microsoft 365 service. So C and E, then A. This is going to be right answer. Let's see. So assign the conditional access policy, that's fine. Create a conditional access policy and set up the policy to require device compliance from Intune. That's your condition, that's your policy, that's your condition, and that's your target. Great. Because answer is in this sequence, that's the reason. This is how you need to pick. Otherwise, the right sequence would be what? First this, second this, and third this. Here in the question, it is not asking you to go with the right sequence, only the right answer you need to pick. So this would be the correct answer. Okay. Let's explore this next question, where it is asking your company is using Microsoft Intune to manage their Windows devices, and they want to implement a policy that requires all Windows devices to have a minimum OS version and to be encrypted. So that's the compliance policy. Because under the compliance policy, you might have such conditions like your organization wants, hey, all the operating system must have minimum this version and it must be encrypted. So how should you configure the devices to enforce these requirements? So definitely we need to create a conditional policy and apply that conditional policy to the device groups or the targets. So let's see. Each correct answer is part of the solution, and what three actions should you take? Okay. So the first option I can say, assign the compliance policy to a device group. Yes, we need to assign it. So this could be a right answer. Configure actions for non-compliance to send an email alerts. No, that is not our ask. Nowhere in the question it is asking you need to send, you can say, an email alert for the non-compliant devices. So we will ignore that. Create a new device compliance policy for Windows. Definitely we will do that because it's about the compliance policy and we have to create the policy first. Then enable Windows health attestation in the compliance policy. Device health, nothing to do with the device health in this case. Set the device encryption requirement in the compliance policy. Yes, this is required because this is the ask. Compliance policy is looking for OS version and the encryption. So we will check for this one and set the minimum OS version requirement in the policy. So yes, it seems correct. But there we got four options. Assign the compliance policy to the device group. It seems correct. Create a new device policy in Windows. That is correct. Set the device encryption requirement in the compliance policy. This too is correct. And create a device compliance policy. That is also correct. So I think C and E, F. Let's check that. Create a new device compliance policy for Windows. Yes. Set the device encryption requirement. Yes. And set the minimum OS version. That's perfect. So this is what we are going to create it because it is asking for only three. So we can go for this three. If it could have fourth option, then I must go with this option only. But okay, first three is this because that's the primary policy and the condition. So that three is going to be right answer. Now, so final question. Your company is migrating from legacy labs to Windows labs for their hybrid join devices. And they want to ensure that the transition is smooth and that there are no disruption in their OS deployment workflow. So how should you implement a strategy to migrate from legacy labs to Windows labs while minimizing disruptions during the OS deployment process? Again, it has multiple answers, like each correct answer presents a part of solution. Which three actions should you perform? But before going there, we need to understand what exactly labs is. I'm not sure that how many of you are familiar with, but if you are working with Intune, you must heard about it, right? So let's try to understand. And if I'll talk about this labs first, so what exactly it is? Local administrator password solution. This is what we call labs. So as per this question, it says, how should you implement a strategy to migrate your local administrator password solution? So applying this Windows labs policy after the OS deployment workflow is complete. That should be the correct because it ensures that password changes do not interfere with the deployment process. Configure the Windows labs policy to target a different account than the one used by the OS deployment workflow. So this particular option ensure that there is no conflict between you can say the deployment and the labs account that minimize the disruption during the transition. The next one is disable legacy labs emulation mode and at the beginning of the OS deployment workflow. So basically what it does using the clean, no, this is not going to be right answer because disable legacy labs emulation mode at the beginning of the OS deployment workflow. So disabling or using a clean stage is unnecessary and could, you can say, complicate the process without providing the clear benefits. So C, I don't think that's going to be right answer. Enable legacy labs emulation mode at the beginning of the OS deployment workflow. First one is disable, now enable this. So the D, that ensures that legacy process will continue to function smoothly during the migration. Okay, so this can be considered. Fourth one is use a clean staging organizational unit during the OS deployment workflow. It is also not going to be correct one because that will also increase the complications. So I think the right answer is going to be apply the Windows labs policy after the OS deployment workflow is complete. Then we should go with the configure the Windows labs policy to target different account than one used by the OS deployment workflow. And the third option is going to be enable legacy lab emulation mode. So let's see. The apply the Windows labs policy after the OS deployment. It is about, as we discussed, it's about what? Local administrator password solution for hybrid join. So we can apply this policy to the OS deployment workflow, then configure the labs policy target different account than one used by the OS deployment workflow. And finally, we will also enable the legacy labs emulation mode at the beginning of the OS deployment workflow. Okay, so I hope the question and answer which we discuss in this particular session will help you to prepare your MD-102. So thank you so much for watching and see you in next.